Welcome to A Word from the Wise, the new Solwise podcast. We'll be coming to you the first of each month. I'll be talking with a guest on different subjects, news, our products, and just our opinion on various things that are going on in the tech world. Right, well, welcome to our first podcast. I'm Louise Barrett, and this is Steve, who's with me, Steve Mace.
Steve Mace.
Firstly, we've decided to call the podcast A Word from the Wise. We had a competition across our social feeds, and a bunch of people put their ideas forward. So Steve Richardson came up with A Word from the Wise, which I think is quite a cool one. Rita Lehman came up with a second place one, which we called Talking Solwise. So it's a bit of a shame we didn't get that one as well, but you can't have two. We had a couple that I thought were quite funny that obviously we didn't get shortlisted. So my husband suggested Ramblings from an Old Folks Home, which is funny, isn't it? Because that's what we call ourselves when we're in the office. So it's
just good to think what he thinks about yourself, though, really, doesn't he?
And you, of course.
Well,
he has known you 20 years.
I don't mind being called an old git
because you are an old git.
Because I am an old git.
And then my friend Baz said, talking bollocks with Barrett. I thought that was quite amusing as well, but probably not appropriate, is what it is, isn't it?
Not in the politically correct world.
No, probably not. Anyway, so on to what we're going to talk about today. So what I was thinking is we could have a chat about how our business has got through the pandemic, really. Obviously, we were quite big in the ingenious world a couple of years ago, but people stopped.
There was a time when we were back to $1 million a year on the ingenious. I think it peaked at about 950,000 or something like that, and before the pandemic I think it was down to about, it had come down, I would admit, but it was still a fairly healthy proportion of our sales.
Yeah, we did all right in the likes of schools and hotels, and I think that's obviously where it went wrong.
It was the hospitality and the school sector, which obviously is
they all closed.
Just all closed, so the ingenious sales went down by 90% or something.
We had a little blip back up, didn't we, last summer with the campsites.
Yeah, we've got a few more in the campsites, but I still don't think that those sectors are back up running properly yet. And I think running around and thinking about what Wi-Fi systems they're putting is low on their priority of things at the moment.
I suppose it's more about keeping people safe, but I suppose if in those sorts of places they're going to want the Wi-Fi back on for the working from home crowd, which has really been our saviour, I think, this last 2 years.
Yeah, but that's more to do with the home side of the Wi-Fi rather than the institution side of the Wi-Fi.
Well, whilst that's true, we have had people contact us saying that they're going to be away in their camper vans and their
the camper van side.
Thing.
Obviously that's moving away from the ingenious side, but the Patriot range and that sort of thing, which now of course got the new 5 gig version of the Patriot, so that's a nice worthwhile addition to the product range. And but of course even then they weren't allowed to go away in caravans or something, were they? Or
I don't know, they could go in caravans, but they weren't allowed to use shared facilities, I think, for a time as well, were they? So I think you had to have your own loo and shower at some point.
Yeah, so you're okay if you brought a spade for a hole round the back, but not much else.
Well, maybe so, yeah.
So the ingenious has dropped, and but as you're hinting there, the good side is obviously all the products and technology for home working,
which was quite interesting.
Which exploded.
Which was also very interesting at the beginning of the pandemic, because obviously we sold out of home plug, because our plan was to keep on with that in a small degree, but we ran out about 2 or 3 months into the pandemic, didn't we? So.
And PoE stuff.
Yeah.
Which is all stuff with people using home.
Like VoIP
phones and all that sort of thing. I mean, we saw something like 1,000 PoE injectors in a single month.
Well, if you recall, we had that PoE injector that we used to sell 100 a month of, and in that first April of the pandemic, we sold 4,000.
Yeah,
that was madness. That wasn't it?
Couldn't get hold of them.
Yeah,
and they still go out the door, but
they do. I think the whole thing though has changed how people are working. So the working from home crowd are still buying this sort of kit, and more places are seeing a good work from the office and from home balance. So for instance, my husband is working 3 days at home, 3 days in the office and then 2 days at home. So there are many companies that have gone down that route, because it's proved people can work from home. I mean, it's sad that it's taken a pandemic to prove that, but it has proved that you can do that. Certainly with the likes of Teams and Zoom and the proof that you can all still talk to each other. So I imagine there probably is some sort of a loneliness bit there, but
I did do a speed awareness test
over Teams.
Over Teams, and it was an absolute nightmare. I think there were about 8 of us there, and I was the only one that was doing it on a proper computer with proper internet access.
Well, people were on phones.
Phones, and all you could see was, their chest or
maybe you should have told
hair
them,
on top of a head or something like that.
You should have told them where you worked, and that so we could help them out with some kit to get their computers on.
Unbelievable. Do a speed awareness course on a phone.
But with the working from home, I think that many people have gone away from traditional broadband as well, haven't they? If you think about what we've sold most in the 2 years, is 4G and 5G stuff.
Well, I suppose that trend was there anyway. It's obviously it's accelerated it.
Yeah.
Because before, people were quite happy with using their internet at home for playing around on their phone and checking their social media postings and all that sort of thing, and suddenly they appreciated the fact that you can't do serious working from home on a 2.5-inch screen on a phone, which you're also trying to use for your phone calls as well, so you have to keep pulling it away and put it back. It's absolutely ridiculous trying to do it on the phone. So obviously, yes, the idea of having a proper home-based router set up with a proper antenna set up has exploded.
We found that actually. I'm a governor in one of the local schools, and I think, and obviously, I mean, I live in a fairly affluent area, so you'd think all the kids had a computer at home, but that just wasn't the way. Some of these kids were just doing their homework on mobile phones, and I think it came as quite a surprise to the school as to actually how many kids didn't have access to a computer or a laptop, and they bought some in and some 4G routers so that the kids could get online.
Did they buy our 4G routers?
Sadly not, no. They had the government supplied ones.
Oh, the government supplied ones,
yeah,
right.
But they did buy some Chromebooks and the like, and loaned those.
Depending upon who got a backhander in the local government, yeah.
I couldn't possibly say.
Can't possibly comment, no.
Yeah. But we saw the rise of the XPOL 1 from pointing, and the Teltonica RUT routers over the last 2 years has just been really significant for us as a business.
They were good sellers at the start, but it just went ballistic in the space of 6 to 8 weeks. It just went astronomical. I mean, particularly we've been telling everybody for several years that if you want to do a mobile connection from home the proper way, you need an outdoor aerial.
Absolutely, yeah.
What's good enough for a phone is not necessarily going to be good enough for a router with proper data transport requirements. So yes, you need to go for something like a Teltonica router, which also, again, that went to, I think we were selling something like £300,000 per year of those before the pandemic, and it's shot to, so we went over a factor of 4. So in the space of a few months, it was just couldn't get the stuff into the country.
It's been madness, hasn't it? Really?
And the XPOL antenna, which is a fantastic complement to that, a nice omnidirectional, fairly compact outdoor antenna. It was a natural partner for the Teltonica routers, and it's just. We were getting those in, I don't know how many pallets at a time, but I know outside was groaning with the damn things at one stage.
Well, I know I don't drive the forklift very often, but the first time I drove the forklift, now that we've done our training course, I did a 6-pallet delivery, which was, I think, all XPOL 1s. Yeah.
And that was happening every couple of weeks.
And we did have one delivery, I think, that was 16 pallets, didn't we? I seem to record. That was back end of last year.
I remember 12. I don't remember but it may be that. But because of course we're having to get them. It completely mucked up Pointing's delivery schedule, because they usually like to get them in by sea, with the appropriate 3 months notice and lead time required, and they were virtually filling up whole transport aircraft full of antennas. And the interesting thing was it was majority UK.
Yeah. Well, they'd said to us before, hadn't they, even before the pandemic, that they sold predominantly directionals into mainland Europe, and omnis were really big in the UK. I wonder why that is. It's a bit curious, really, isn't it? Because I'd have thought anomaly was if you don't know where the cell tower is, or maybe they know where the cell tower is better in mainland Europe.
Well, it's not just a case of know where it is, it's whether you can actually see the damn thing.
Well, indeed. And also, if you're on the move a lot, so many people are putting these on the likes of barges and boats and motorhomes and so on.
It has swung it back a little bit. It used to be something like 90% for the omnidirectionals, and the directionals have actually increased now. I would say out of all of the outdoor antennas sold now, it must be going off for about 25% now are directional antennas, which take more.
Have got both.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, of course, the problem with if you can get a directional working, so you're prepared to go through finding where the mast is, and the fine-tuning and the tweaking necessary to point it towards the mast, checking what your signal is, which you can't do stood up at a ladder next to the antenna. It's going back to the old days of trying to tune your indoor aerial on your TV. For some reason, when you stood next to it, it was always better than when you stood on the sat on the settee. So it's the same with the 4G antennas. You have to go up and tweak, and then come down the ladder and look at the signal settings and all, this sensitivity and all that sort of garbage, and then go back up and tweak it again. So if you can go through the aggro setting up a directional, it can often be a better alternative than the omnidirectional. The only bad thing is you're locked into a particular mast for a start.
Yeah.
And sometimes things happen to masts. They may put a new one up, or that one may go down, or who knows. And of course, you've got to go through that whole getting the ladders up and going up, and maybe spending a whole morning relining it back up again.
Or in sometimes people might have cherry pickers to where they are as well, which actually needs a hire. So it's a bit of a faff.
That's it.
Yeah.
So, and of course, we moved on from that was the big 4G antenna, the X-Pol 1, which is still going out at, I don't know, something stupid like $1,500 a month or something like that. But the only problem with the X-Pol 1 is it's not doesn't cover the 3.8 gigahertz,
no, which has come in
5G
the last
bands.
few years.
So that's come in, and there's been a big surge now in buying a 5G compliant, the 5G version of the X-Pol 1. I can show you one of these because I bought one from downstairs because I knew you'd want to see it. Not you. Over there. So
you'll have to discuss it though, because some people won't see this with a video.
Okay, right. Well, I shall discuss this. So the 5G equivalent of the 4G X-Pol 1. For a start, it's a different colour. The 4G one, I think, is in a scruffy, dirty beige plastic box, and the 5G one.
It's a beautiful beige. You can't say it's scruffy, dirty. It's a beautiful beige.
Yes, and then you've got the 5G version, which actually is
brilliant white by the look of that.
It's a more pristine white, so it would suit my my wife's idea of interior design far better. Everything has to be white in our house. So this is the 5G equivalent, really, of the standard X-Pol 1. It's actually a bit thicker. I think it's a bit thicker.
I think it is as well. Yeah,
but
has the same fittings though, doesn't it? So does it still come with the suction cups? And
I'm pretty sure it does. Yeah. So you've got the kit for wall mounting, for pole mounting, and I think
there are suction cups.
I think there are 4 suction cups in there. So that's more of appeal really to the caravan crowd, so they can
take it off, because obviously you don't want to keep it on when you've got a moving vehicle.
No. We have had people try that sort of thing, but it doesn't work. You end up with the aerial rattling down the road. And
we don't sell spare containers for it either, so so if you do that, it's a new antenna altogether.
It's amazing how many times we've had people...
So there's 2 versions of this. There's the -21 and the -41. What's the difference between those?
Okay, now 4G... is largely nowadays, let's say largely, 99.99% of 4G connections use a twin aerial setup.
Right.
So in this plastic housing, you've actually got 2 aerials. In this case, they're arranged as a cross-polarized to ensure optimum capture of whatever polarization and signals come in.
Right.
It's basically, are the waves going that, or are they doing that, or are they doing that? So this has got 2 polarizations to double the chance of picking up a decent symbol. So the 4G traditionally, well, it started off as a single stream service using a single aerial, and that didn't last very long, so they went over to a 2 aerial setup. So 4G is using a 2 aerials, and the straight replacement for the X-Pol 1 is this. We call it this -21. I can't remember what the full part code is.
Well, I think it's 5G X-Pol 1-21 or
yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
So this is same as really as the X-Pol 1. It's got 2 antennas in the housing, which is what you need for 4G, and the vast majority of the domestic orientated 5G routers that are hitting the marketplace at the moment. We're talking about the bottom rung of the 5G router ladder.
But that's probably enough for what most people would need at home, surely. And
It
certainly
is,
if they were
it
working
is.
at home, or if they
Yeah.
were away in their caravan or something like that.
So that's the -21, which, as you say, is the 2 aerials in, which you've got means you've got 2 antenna cables coming from the bottom to go in the 2 connections on your router.
Yeah. And they're just standard SMA connectors,
They are the standard SMA connectors, which all well, there it is. Look at that. They going to cut out the video.
Yeah.
Showing a knife.
Anyone who's not watching on video, he's got his knife out to open these boxes.
And then you've got this beastie, which is the.
So that looks the same size, but just a heck of a lot more cables then.
Yes. So this is the dash 41. Now the difference is that 5G can support I'm going to say it can support a larger number of streams than 4G, but 4G also can support a large number of streams. That the UK's decided not to go that route.
Yeah.
So a 5G can support a lot of streams. Oh, drop something. A lot of too fat. A lot of simultaneous data streams. Now, as soon as you start going towards the more professional end of the 5G router, you'll find that your 5G routers have more than 2 antenna connections.
Right. So how many has this one got? 4?
This has got, so this antenna here has got 4 built-in antennas, yet again in a complex cross-polarized X.
So has that got 2 crosses in it then, or?
You know, I was
Is it
not going to ask me that.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it's sort of 1 at sort of, at 45 degrees to each other.
Right, yeah. So it could look like a star inside.
Yeah, some sort of star arrangement in there, and presumably. So that's got the 4 antenna connection codes. So if you've got one of these more professional 5G routers, which takes one of these sort of 2.5 gig type speed capabilities, then you would need something that probably has 4 antenna connections on it, which is where the dash 41 comes in.
If you had a standard home router that only took 2, would there be any benefit to using this dash 41?
Absolutely zero. There'd be
No.
more benefit for us because they cost more money.
Absolutely, yeah.
But as far as the punter in the street is concerned, absolutely no advantage in going for a 4
So if you've only got
antenna.
2 connectors, stick with a dash 21 then.
And I'm not even convinced that it would really be a way of future-proofing yourself, because
I hate that expression though, don't you?
you
Buy what you need now,
Buy what
I
you need
think,
now.
yeah.
The idea of banging that up because, well, in 2 years' time I may need a 5G router with 4 antenna connections. Not worth even thinking about. Just put the cheaper model up, which is 2 antennas. So that's the 4 aerial.
Well, talking of future proofing though, would there be a benefit if you've just got a 4G router to be putting the dash 21 5G router on?
Oh, certainly. I mean, the now that ingenious of not ingenious.
Teltonic.
Pointing.
All right.
Pointing. That's
Yeah.
it. Pointing. What the because we mentioned, or perhaps we haven't mentioned, the X-Pol 1. Its days are numbered.
Yeah. It's had a good innings though, hasn't it?
Nothing wrong with the X-Pol 1. Beautiful antenna, selling by the shed load.
And it does what it says on the tin.
does
It's
what
one
it
of those,
says on
isn't
the
it?
tin.
It's been one of those no problem
Yeah.
type products that we've had.
The problem we've got is the plastic moulding apparently in China, which is used for the X-Pol 1, is, they say, getting end of life.
Right.
And Pointing don't want to go through the expense of commissioning a new mould. Not where they say, what's the point, because the 5G models are going to take over
Well,
very soon.
it's a fair point, isn't it, really?
So the dash 21, that's the 2 antenna version. So that's really the direct replacement for the X-Pol 1. It's now it's less than £10 difference between it.
Yeah.
And between the 4G version and the 5G version. And since the aggro really is going up the ladder and nailing things to walls and that sort of thing, pay the extra tenner, put the 5G version up and not even think about the 4G version.
Would there be any reason not to do that though if you had a 4G? No.
Can't really think of any reason. Its 4G performance is pretty much the same as the X-Pol 1, but of course then you've also got the 5G capability.
So if you've got the extra tenner, you might as well spend it.
Okay, yeah, it's tenner, yeah.
Yeah, well that makes sense, doesn't it? And obviously we particularly recommend the Teltonika routers to go with them, and we have found over the last few years that they've worked really well together and been a good blend, a good kit for people to buy, and we even sell them as kits on the website.
Yeah, it's been a good merge between the products of the two companies.
But Teltonika are doing some changes as well, aren't they? I think they've had some, Lithuania have had some beef with China, which has impacted the chipset issue.
Well, supplies of chipsets for 4G routers have been a real pain since mid last year, and it's necessitated, for example, us having to put staggeringly long lead time orders in for Teltonika products.
Yeah, well, some of them are 4 months, aren't they?
Yeah,
5 months.
Talking about 4-month lead time, which if you've got a nice steady sales model, you can predict 4 months quite easily, but at the moment we always seem to be doing catch up. With more and more sales, you've got to try and predict, well, how much is it going to go up over the 4-month period to try and predict. But anyway, yes, the Teltonika already last year, I think it was last June time, said they were going to start bringing an alternative 4G chipset into their generic model range. That's the sort of 240, 950, 955, that sort of thing. And so they were using the QuickTel chipset, and they went over to the, I don't know how you pronounce it, MIG or MIG or something chipset, which was functionally identical, and it was just a case of assuring more supply route for the 4G modules.
But they kept that in the same model number, didn't they? So they had two chipsets in the same model number, which was a bit more complicated.
Oh, it's an absolute nightmare, because we had two products. I think they've
learned from that now, don't you think? So
we're
moving on. Come springtime, it will go from there'll be the 240 and the 241.
Yes.
Which will be functionally the same, but just the different chipset.
And that's using the new third chipset that they're going for, which
have we had pricing on that? Do we know if there's going to be a difference in price?
No difference as it stands at the moment.
Right.
There is a hint that the older models will go up in price.
Right. Well, I suppose they'll be the ones with a limited chipset that'll have traditionally the chipsets come from China.
Yes. I don't know if anybody knows this, but if anybody's been reading the papers, that sort of thing, there's been some political cock-up or hiccup between Lithuania and China. As far as I can tell, it's all because Lithuania started to get quite friendly with Taiwan.
Right.
And the Chinese don't even recognise Taiwan, don't even think the country exists. They still think it's an offshoot of China. So what happened was Lithuania, I don't know this for a fact, I'm just reading between the various news items on the Telegraph and all that sort of thing. So Lithuania started to get very friendly with Taiwan, putting factories in and trade deals and all this sort of thing, and the Chinese are starting to get a bit upset about it. So Lithuania, or more specifically Teltonika, have got a tie-in now with a company called MediaTek, which is another big Far Eastern chip manufacturer.
And so these new chips then for the 241, 951, etc. are going to be MediaTek.
They're going to be MediaTek ones. Now, MediaTek specifically are a Taiwanese company, and they have the Taiwanese fabrication plants.
Right.
So Teltonika are covering all their bases here. They've got their traditional products, chipset supplies from China, and also they've got an equivalent chipset supply route coming from MediaTek in Taiwan.
Yeah.
And as you say, what they've done sensibly this time is, rather than keeping all the routers with the same model number, which makes it an absolute nightmare. When I say the model numbers, the underlying model numbers, which we were buying from Teltonika, all had some subtle differences in the model number, but the headline model numbers, like for example the 240 and the 950, they kept the same. And they've realised, and at the time I'd said that's a really stupid thing, because you're going to have people getting very confused.
Well, I've had the same conversation with a customer today. There's got a customer that specifically wants the 950 with the T in the middle.
Yes.
Because there was a subtle difference between the two chipsets, that they were using them for a particular project, and I don't know the specifics.
It's if you did custom firmware.
Oh, is that what it? That
If you did custom firmware, you'll have written your firmware to support the SDK, the software development kit, for a specific chipset.
Yeah.
So you've done all your software changes for that, assuming that particular LTE module was in the router.
Right.
And if it was a different LTE module, all of your software subroutine calls and that sort of thing inside your software would fail, which was which you could get away around. You just basically had to repatch your software and that sort of thing. But people who have commissioned software people to do the changes as outside contractors, and then those contractors have moved on and they're left with the software, I've got the option then to call the software contractors in. So it was a pain, which is why, as you say, we're getting people still occasionally phoning up and saying, no, I want that particular chipset, that particular model is what I want.
Yeah.
But going to the MediaTek one, as far as the guy in the street is concerned, it will be absolutely no difference. It's got exactly the same LTE performance, exactly the same speed, blah, 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 blah. But rather sensibly, they've used different model numbers.
Yeah,
which
makes life easier, doesn't it?
For those people that care, I'm sure we are still going to get flooded with phone calls saying, well, why should I go for the 240 or rather the 241?
Yeah. Well, I guess what we'll have to do is just put a comparison on the website that says there's no difference, just the chipset's different. And hopefully that will people see it.
Yeah.
I mean, we could even keep it, I suppose, on the same product page. Or will that cause more confusion?
I don't know. We're going to get phone calls either way.
If anyone's got any ideas, please let us know. sales@solwise.co.uk. Well, I guess that's pretty much all we can chat about this time. And
I don't know how long that was, but
I don't know. But if anyone's got any comments, or just pop us an email across, sales@solwise.co.uk, give us a ring or pop in. Anyone who's local knows who we are. If anyone's got any ideas of what they'd like us to speak about going forward, we're quite happy to sit here and give our opinion, aren't we? Cause
it's an opinion, yes.
Yes, it does go back to the talking with bollocks and ramblings in an old folks' home.
Talking heads.
Yeah, we could do that. Well, thank you very much, Steve.
Okay.
And we'll have you back in another month, perhaps.
Yes,
All
no
right.
problem.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you for listening. We'll be back next month. We are available on Spotify and Apple Podcast. And if you're a masochist, you can watch us on YouTube so you can see us in all our glory. See you next month.